So welcome everyone. We're actually starting a new unit tonight, and we are being joined by those who are here in real time, and then those who are unreal learners who are time poor or just working unusual hours, or those who actually prefer the recordings as well. So I'm Vicky Hanna and your trainer. Monday nights is diploma in youth work. And this particular unit is CHCCCS004. And we've got this for 3 weeks. This is session, actually, I think we've got it for 4. This is session 1 of 4. The fourth one will mostly be sitting around the skills, which will be role plays and doing some mock ones, ready for you to be able to do your assessment work. So let's get started. So we'll do a little bit of a check-in. How was everyone's day? We can see that last week was Labor Day in Queensland, so I sent you through a recording. And tonight, I'm just going to let you know I'm logging in. My reflection number is a very solid 7, which is not bad given how busy we are. So on a scale of 1 to 10, just 1, I'm here and please be kind to me. Anything up to 5, we always will be. But this is about you being able to, like, how fully present am I stepping into this space? How am I traveling at the moment? And we want to be mindful, 1, for yourself around self-reflection, and 2, for us, because we are all peers in this space and we are supporting each other. And 10, of course, is I'm so happy I could skip. Vicky, take the night off. I'll run your class. So nobody's come higher than a 9.5, and I know what you're all doing when you do that. But please just drop into chat and let me know how you're going and where you're up to with your self-reflection number. Okay, so I will share my screen. And wow, Chris, look out! I could give you work tonight. Let's have a look here and see if I can share my screen. So it's a lot of depth in tonight. This particular unit, it really is deep diving into the who, what, how, when, where, and why. Gosh, sorry, guys, of our work. Let's bring us up and see how we look. Let's hide this. Snow up our bigger screen. Okay. So assess coexisting needs. What does that mean? That means that someone might present with, if we're looking at really young people, because when we're working with youth, our target group is 12 years to 24 years of age. However, we can often find ourselves working with Gen Y, which is up to 34, if they are young parents and we're doing early intervention prevention work. So we may have a 34-year-old parent with a 12-year-old young person, or 11, where they're just shy of meeting our target group, how a young person is actually defined in the eyes. So often we work with child, youth, and family. So when we're talking about that, it is not in isolation. We might work with a 6 or a 7-year-old because we want them to just get familiar with, who do you talk to if you're stuck on something? What does that actually look like? So coexisting needs could be a young person with ASD, ADHD, and they've got one of their parents incarcerated. That could be a coexisting need. Or it could be a young person who is fetal alcohol syndrome and also working with ADHD. And are we going to separate those 2 diagnoses? Or what if it's undiagnosed ADHD, but we think that perhaps there could be? What if it's in an area, in a scope that maybe would not warrant an NDIS plan? However, us as workers might have to make some, what I call, reasonable adjustments when we're working with. So we need to be able to look at it is this, but could it also be something else? And sometimes we've got to dig a little deeper. How do we find that out is in our intentional interviewing. So intake and assessment is nothing can happen there. We might circle back and go, like, I want to talk a little bit more about this. And not all information is going to be presented to us. Why not? Because often a lot of people want to present their very best to you and they don't share information because they think it just may cloud how you view them. So we want to give a good report. We'll unpack that a little bit more. It's not always a conscious thing that someone does, but it can often be an unconscious thing. So we may also be considering just something else where we go, there's a little bit more here, but I'm just not quite sure yet. So how do we assess that? So what I might do is ask if someone would be good enough to do our acknowledgement to country as we jump in. Who would like to do that tonight?
I think I was. I don't know. Go for it. I'll step out for sure.
No. You got in there first. If you want to do it, you can go, Shannon. Otherwise, I don't mind. No, Shannon just went mute. That's me. Okay. I saw that. That's quick. Okay. In the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude from the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nations people and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. And I am coming to you from Wiradjuri country there tonight.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it, Chris. Working with our acknowledgement to country will open up pretty much any meeting that we do. Of course, you're doing a diploma, so it's quite often that you're going to be facilitating those meetings. Quite likely that you will be inviting people in who are part of your alliance circle, the wraparound supports, where you've done referrals and you're doing some shared casework plans around clients. But if you're bringing people together, acknowledgement to country is considered best practice when we're working together with our other colleagues and opening that up. Knowing where you sit on which land is also really helpful. Thanks, Chris, for saying where you are. If I'm doing a Zoom meeting, I like to pop it up there as well. And even though I sit on Tarrabalane Bunda, Balai, Gurang, and Gureng, and I'm near the Butchulla people, most people will know where I live is based in Bundaberg. So, but we've got to also sit respectfully in both of those places. Just a little bit of housekeeping, cameras on. If you're comfortable, please have the camera off if you need to have that regulation for yourself, or eat some dinner, or have a coffee, or do those things that you need to do. It's an adult space, and we're all working from home, I understand. Microphones on mute unless you're speaking, though we are a small class, there's not a lot of that chatter and background. The larger the class, of course. Class break times, I'm going to push you, so we'll go through, but we will have a break. We may bundle that in one, but we'll get this work done so that you can step out if you need to be able to do that, and I will piggyback on the back of our recording to have those breaks. We'll jump into a breakout room to do an activity. However, I don't record those breakout rooms, but I do ask everybody to come back with key learnings and an unexpected thing that jumped out of that so that we can share it for all of our learners who are watching in the recording, because that is the feedback they've provided, is they just feel that there's such great peer support that's happening in the breakout rooms and they feel like they're missing out on something. So I've just dropped that extra step in there as well. Respectful relationships. I'm at work you're at work, we work as peers and colleagues in this space. It's good to have differences of opinion to bounce it around where it's relevant on how can we best work with our clients. But I like that formula. I conduct myself like this in the workplace. It helps me ensure that I'm working inside those professional boundaries, but you be you inside that boundary. So my formula is 95% professional, 5% personal, which is that water cooler chat and things like that. Breakout rooms, speak freely, knowing that you've got work to do while you're in there. But our relationships are based on our professional standards of practice. No smoking or vaping on camera. Just go off camera. It's your home, your space. Please do that. I talk about trigger warnings and also trauma responses. So a response is not a trigger. A trigger could be that there's something deep and it's actually bringing it up. People can often sense that rising. If that is for you, please look after yourself. If you need to go off camera to step away for a moment and do some breath work, absolutely do that. If you feel that the class is a little overwhelming or I've covered a topic that you're really uncomfortable with, then come back to this in bite-sized pieces. But I am prepping you for work. Those of you who are already working in the sector, just making sure that if you've had a really big week or a big month, or you've had lots of cases where the story after story is sitting there, it leaves an imprint. And I will talk about how the body keeps score. This can sneak up on you when you least expect it. So you might think, I'm doing just great, or Wednesday last week at 2 o'clock, if you'd said to me, this topic, that could have got me a little wobbly, just be really mindful after class and also after your workday. If you are still thinking about something, a client story, something that's going on 30 minutes after you finish work, you've got to debrief. How can we do that? We do it in our reflection journal that we keep, and I encourage you to keep one throughout your whole career. Just a line down the middle of the page, what went well on one side, so plus, what could we have done differently on the negative or the deficit side, and just enough room on the bottom for notes. Okay, today I checked in as a 7. I wrapped up my day as a 5. I'm pretty tired, but 5 is good, right in the middle, and that's great. But if we checked out at maybe a 2 or a 3, that's telling us something. And if we use that language for our self-reflection, it will help us understand how we are going in that space as well. Also, if it's sitting there, who can you call? So 13, 11, 14 is Lifeline's number. They get a lot of students. I'm a 20-year Lifeline telephone counsellor. And when I first did it, actually probably longer, it was, I can tell you, it was 1987 was the very first time I did the Lifeline telephone counselling. Please don't tell me when you were born. So I did the very first one in 1987. And then I did the next training. Even though I was working, I went straight back in again at 1997. And then I do a lot of my PD with them as well in that space. All of them are Cert 4 level telephone counsellors. So counsellors is their core training and qualification. And then telephone is a unique skill set where we are listening for the pauses. We're listening for the breath work. We're listening to what is not being said. We don't have those visual cues when we're working with someone, and that can be a little tricky, but that's something that happens in that space. But a lot of students will call 13, 11, 14 and say, I am studying. We're covering this particular topic, and I'm just finding that some of the conversation is just making me feel a little unsettled as well. Now, if you've got a supervisor, they'll want to talk to you when you're in the workplace about the things that are happening. It may or may not be provided in your workplace. I've got the same professional supervisor and I've had them for over 15 years. I've never met them face to face. I've only ever done telephone debrief with them. So lots and lots of different things, some really, really difficult cases, everything from first time in court, they were there with me when I did that, all the way through to a young person suicide and how that has impacted me as a worker, especially if I work with that young person for a decade. So a good professional supervisor will unpack what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. However, if your workplace does not provide that, you can go on the register and find someone who does that independently. You can source that. I can get it for free through my other work that I do. However, I want my privacy. I don't want to go to a professional supervisor that lives in the same regional rural town that I live in. I absolutely want someone who does not know me. So that is your choice. It is tax deductible. It costs me $125, and I utilize it when I need it. Okay. So it's just one of those things, because if something happens to you in the workplace and someone wants to put that back on you, where you may have a psychological injury based on a workplace health and safety incident. In some states and territories, psychological injury is now part of the Workplace Health and Safety Act. In Queensland, that was introduced in October 2023. It should sit inside your policies and procedures. They were nervous about bringing it in simply because you can't always measure a psychological injury. However, there's enough evidence-based data to document that. And this comes into the unit that we're doing tonight. How do we assess, recognize, observe, and name something that we can't see? We could hear it, we could sense it. They may not be able to articulate exactly what it is, but we've got to be able to rely on our knowledge, our skills, but our gut as well. There's a lot of room for us to use that intuitive space that we have. Trust it, because it's giving you information deep in the back of your mind that you know already, but we're thinking, oh, I don't know, something's not quite right. You may not be able to put your finger on it, but that will be your study, your learnings coming forward there. And then be kind to yourself. Know that the work that you're doing can sometimes be really hard. So get that work-life balance. And I'll say that really quickly because I'm actually not doing that myself at the moment. So there are moments where we've got to really bring that forward. But some stress is good stress. If it's got a timeline, if we can see it's got an end date or a sunset clause around it. So there's times we've got to draw on that. The only way we can do that if we've got enough deposits there to make a few withdrawals. So we may be looking after ourselves, everything's fine. You go, well, that did not impact me. But if we're not looking after ourselves, you've got nothing there to draw on. So take those moments in your day. The reflective practice is one. Getting some sunshine if you can, park the car a little further and walk if that's what it is. Listen to some music, get away from the dopamine fix that we have with our phones. Make your phone sort of, go to sleep when you're going to sleep so that you're not disturbed unless you're on call as a worker 24/7. Then definitely leave your phone on. But if you find that you're getting to that place, as Chris said, that pointy end of the stick with our work, then sometimes you've got to do those things. And I give my phone to other workers. I'll say, listen, can you relieve me for 2 nights? And they'll say, got it. And I'll say, this is what I think is happening. So I'll even do a handover in that space as well. We can do that. But if we're still working after the time we finish at the end of the day, that will catch up on you. Absolutely, for sure. And a lot of workers in the sector will do burnout, or it'll show up as brownout, which is just a word I invented, but that's when the power is not quite there. So, I'm referring to that as, oh gosh, sorry, a very sensitive PowerPoint slide and a mouse not playing the game.
Excuse me, Vicky. Quick question. Can someone there or yourself tell me, because at the moment I've got all of you down the side and it's covering some of the wording. How do I put it up the top?
You don't. No, you've done exactly what you need to. You've just told me, Michelle, watch me do that. How's that? Is that better?
No, because your pictures are still all down the side, covering the words on the screen that you're showing.
On your screen, you just click on the right up the top on the right-hand side, it says
Yep.
view.
There's a little minus sign.
Okay,
You
hang
should-
on. Well, that says hide thumbnail video. Or you've got show small active speaker video. Then it's, I don't know
You
what the
can-
two blue dots are. Show grid video.
Yeah. So
Exit full screen.
Swap shared screen with video.
It says view on it, and it's a little like movie thing. And then you exit full screen and then it will change.
But inside this box though. Oh God. Hide thumbnail. Show small active speaker video. There's
Michelle,
two blue
can
lines. I don't know what that is. And it doesn't even say.
Okay, so it sounds like a tech thing you're in, Michelle. Can we pick this up? I promise we'll take a break earlier for you.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Yep. Keep going.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. We're recording and I'm mindful we're doing a tech talk.
Yeah, no worries.
So, it's all good. You'll have everything. Just we've done our housekeeping. We don't have any emergency procedures, but I've done your mental health checkup from the neck up, and then course outline and structure of what we're going to be doing, which is 4 units on this particular one, and the assessment requirements and submission date. So 4 weeks after our last class will be when we're actually doing this. So overview of session. Tonight, what we're going to do is the need for an assessment. I'm just going to open that up, Michelle, so that might not have been what the problem was you're in as well. The assessment tools that we use, how do we assess somebody? What are the steps we can use? The assessment process, how do we go about that? And then preparing for an assessment. So some positions advertised are intake and assessment officers only, nothing else. That is all they do. Good morning, how are you? Then they'll refer you over into another worker who will be managing a caseload. So depending on the size of someone's caseload, Chris shared with us at the beginning of tonight what her caseload is looking like. And then there's Joe doing a similar role as well with about double that caseload. Now that can be because someone is working in that space. It's not a competition because every service model, every school, every single person will build on a caseload, but there'll be we're tapped. And a caseload gives us interesting information. So we use caseloads also at HADA. So we might have a space where we've got people who are coming in needing reasonable adjustments. So it might be somebody who has a learning adjustment that we need to be able to, they can still do the work, but they need some extra support. So that could be dyslexia, that could be a hearing impaired person where we might bring in an Auslan interpreter for them as well when we're working with them one-on-one. So how do we classify that? We can classify that based on the disability that they present with, or there could be some other areas that they cannot quite process the information. The words might move around on the page and they'll read something, forget it straight away. So we have everything from acquired brain injury or right through to people who are ASD originals and, very intelligent. However, the processing side of things might need some adjustment. And we need to be able to classify that. And that's our own internal language. But we cannot classify somebody based on their disability. That would be discriminatory. So it's really important here. What tools do we use? So we will use CCC and CCC. And that depends when we're working. This is our internal tool, which is complexity. So if it's 1C, all that means is that the learner might stay with us or the client might stay with us once a week for 4 weeks, some really intensive coaching. And then they'll move to fortnightly, and then they'll move to monthly. And then they may go into that wider group of learner support management. So everyone that enrolls with HADA can book in for 1 hour per month. And that lines up with your units that you're doing and your assessment work. Some people might use that as, oh, look, I really want to be able to do some role plays one-on-one. If we bring it over to your experience, I'm talking about Hader, but this is also relevant for your clients, that if I can bring it into real time for you, some learners never book in a learner support management meeting. So if we're assessing them, very self-directed, very self-managed, all they need is the resources and some information and let me go. Okay, I've got this, I'll manage that. So our clients might also come in and just say, look, I'm just looking for some information about where are the emergency and crisis accommodation. Okay, that's great. And I'm already seeing a psychologist. I'm already seeing a mental health worker. Yes, that's a coexisting need, but one of those is being really self-managed and happening well. When we're sitting in with Hader, we work around assessment work for the units around the qualification only, even though almost every single trainer on our team, actually, yes, every single trainer on our team, we all hold the qualification that you do. We all have industry currency greater than 10 years. It's all within the last 12 months. So it can't be that, oh, I used to do this work and now I've got my trainer, now I'm going to jump in. We must have currency. We must be still working in the sector, and that's the standard that Hader are looking for. As well. It might only be 4 to 6 hours a week, but we must still be working in that. At TAFE, you must spend 2 weeks as a trainer back in the industry, back doing that work, or you're not current as a trainer. Some RTOs aren't quite that higher standard, like say TAFE or Hader. So that's a really important step. So for me, when I'm working with a client, I know that the trainer or the person doing their call or their intake or their assessment is somebody that is currently working with the unit that you're doing right now. They know that. They're doing that body of work. So the need for assessment is important. It's very individualized as well. Your job might be, you will see these clients in this age target group, this demographic, but here's the other language that sits in there, the psychographic of that client. And that's where you do your intake assessment work. So it's like, I'm presenting with ADHD, I'm also homeless, and I need a food hamper. All right. Lots of things going on in that space for that client. So we've got to be able to work out what is our priority of need. Our priority of work sits around what the client thinks is the most important for them. So with that work might be just saying to the client, okay, so thanks for coming in today. Great to be working with you. So what is it that you're hoping that we can cover in your session today? I have just been kicked out of my unit. I've got 2 months to get out. Okay, that's telling me something. What does that tell you? Michelle, what does that tell you when someone says, I've been told they're not going to renew my lease and I've got to be out in 2 months?
It tells me straight away that something's going on with the landlord. They could be thinking of selling, or they could be thinking of moving in. They could be thinking of putting the rent up. They could be unsure. There could be a lot of things.
It could be. What for us, it means we've got 2 months. That's what it means for us. But the client might be freaking out with exactly what you just said. They said they're selling the house. They said that they're going to do renovations. They said they're moving back in themselves. All of that is going on because they're inside the narrative, and you get it because you went there straight away. It's like, that's what it's telling me. So you're connecting with that client. Okay, you're speaking the same language. I hear that. What we do as a worker then is, well, we've got 2 months. It's tough out there. We need to start on that straight away. That doesn't mean that let's put that over to the side. With the housing crisis that it is at the moment, that is definitely something. It's going to cause them a great deal of stress. So we need to be stepping into that space. Well, we've got no time to lose. We really need to be working on that. Okay, so what do you think you acknowledging that would automatically do for the client then, Michelle?
By saying what I said, wouldn't
Yeah.
it say that I understand the impact that it could potentially have on them?
Yes. And that it's a priority for you now as well with the work that you're going to do.
Yeah,
So that's,
you don't have long. You got to act quick. It's like, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So now you believe them. Their need is a priority, and you are meeting them there. You are going to like, oh, well, we've got 2 months. No. How would that land when we're having a conversation with them? If you go, well, you know, there's a real shortage, we need to get on that straight away. And so all of a sudden, now they're thinking, I've got someone to support me, and they get it, they understand. So that is us in the need, the first part of the assessment, and then the assessment around that. So let's unpack that a little bit more. Then we're going to use what are our assessment tools, and then we're going to move into the process, and then we're going to be preparing for it. Okay. So there's a process that we do, but in that first sort of minute, how are you? Oh, I'm really stressed. I'm getting kicked out of my house. We need a bit more information. We need that coming from there. How do we do that? We're fully present and we ask relevant questions. So when I say active listening, intentional interviewing questions, the who, what, how, when, where, why, all those open-ended ones, that's how we're going to get to that information out of them. So that's your formula, and that's where we're going to go. So we have, what do we mean by coexisting? Biological. So those of you who know me know I sit in the neurodivergent tribe. But then I might also have a physical. So we might have someone who has a physical disability and a biological disability. One we can't always see, however, it could be impacting our client. The physical, sometimes we can, but not all disabilities are visible. So a celiac, more biological. Could be that we have, because it's hidden, could be inherent as well. So same as ASD and ADHD, we have a lot of people who mask really well. So we don't use in that space language like high functioning, because everything is in a spectrum and we can't nail down, oh, you are this. Labels are for jars. So we're not trying to label a client. We are actually trying to find out, how can I best help you? So the physical might need some accommodating. So let's just say that we're working with a wheelchair user. I have several who I work with and also sitting on boards. So some of those boards will say, you know, we need to make sure we've got disability access toilets. Now, they are very common these days, but what if getting out of the car park and then no actual wheelchair grading with coming up onto the footpath to come around to the front door? What if that's not there? So when we're working in a community sector, we must have all accessibility. And so some of the people who I sit with in those groups are the advisors for our local government council, and they will report, oh, on the corner of such and such and such and such, it's very difficult to take my road across that pedestrian crossing because it's not stable. So then as they sit in collaboratively, sitting on the local government, or is there a way I can send that information up to them, then that then becomes the priority of need for the council. Well, we are doing footpath work, but we need to make sure that that's there for all abilities as well. Not everybody gets in a car and drives to their destination. So we might go, oh gosh, you know, I can't get a park, I've got to go round and round. Or if it's a reverse one, I'm going round and round anyway. I haven't done a reverse park since I got my license. Let's get real. So why would I put myself under that kind of pressure? But there, you'll also notice that there's car parks that might be for wheelchair users, but it will be a different kind of disability. That logo, that icon needs to change, because other people, visually impaired people, also need a disability car park. They may turn up with a carer who is assisting them, and they can be I guess, sort of get some negative impact, because you can't always see that disability unless they've got a white cane or they've got a seeing eye dog or something. That doesn't mean they drove into that park, but their carer did. And if their carer looks like an able-bodied person, then they can actually get microaggressions targeting them for taking up a disability car park. And it can be a really difficult place to traverse. So there's laws against that, the same as we can't say to someone who has English as a second language, we can't say to them, oh, I don't really understand you. I don't know what you're trying to say. We cannot say that. That would be discriminatory and dismissing their rights. Why would we then say to someone who pulled into a car park, why would we say to someone who is neurodivergent, I don't really understand what you mean? We cannot say that. That's equally unlawful, equally an abuse of someone's human rights, equally outside the Discrimination Act. So we don't always see what it is that's happening for someone. We will know if we ask questions. So it's really important, the assessment. It may be where you go, you know what, I think there's something else there, and I'll use that term. And what else might be going on? Oh, we've got hidden trauma. That, don't wear that on your sleeve. We're trying really hard to present well, so you think well of me. And that's that underlying thing. So a lot of people don't get all the supports and services they need because they don't want you to think less of them. We can have the flip side of that as well, where you will get every need. And we've got to be able to break that down a little and see what is the best way to work with you. And I like to ask the client, what works best for you, so that I can individualize my support plan for you. Emotional. So we've got a lot of victim survivors of domestic family violence. Even if their story is a success story and they've made a new life for themselves and they're moving on, the body keeps score, and they may be trauma affected. And each time they tell their story, that is another psychological injury. So this can take decades. It can minimize where they don't jump when someone walks into a room. It could be that now it's really difficult for me to talk about it. And it might be difficult, but the recovery could be quicker over a period of time if they're working with you as their worker. And then our social barriers that we may or may not see so readily, and then the behavioral ones, not having a judgment around that. So often a young person, a child or a young person, or the family carers, or those workers, like especially when we look in education system, it may get labelled incorrectly. So someone could go, look, that's all behavioural. All they've got to do is X, Y, Z. Not necessarily. So we're doing assessment work here. That's why they'll sit with you and not with someone else. So how do we hear that? When someone says that, is like, I get it. Okay, so you mostly notice, try and get that person to go, what would that look like? Try and bring them back to what you see, what you hear, and what they do. Work with facts rather than working with, this is my narrative, this is my worldview, this is my opinion around it, rather than we can't work on someone else's worldview, we can't work on someone's opinion, we can't even work off their story, that narrative they give us. We have to actually do an assessment, and it needs to be surrounded by evidence-based data. When we write our reports, it's exactly the same. So when I see a lot of words in a report, I'm going, okay, that's good. Give me my dot points in the middle of it. Give me my dot points at the beginning, or give me my dot points in the summary. But tell me what it is that you're trying to do. And then I'll go back and have a look at that narrative. But your document for a young person must be held as a legal record for 27 years. So you may not even be working with the document that you did. It could be another worker from many years ago, and you're referring back to that, because that can be subpoenaed and that can be read in court. So you're looking after the workers that are coming in the future, that you're probably going to help and you know, peer support them and mentor them in the workplace. But you're also picking up where somebody left off, and the guidelines have changed. Even how we wrote reports was completely different a decade ago, but we're here now. And so we set that standard based on whatever legislation, whatever their law says around that. And now we know 4 years ago, after the Royal Commission into Institutional Abuse, one of the recommendations was that records will be kept for 27 years, because a lot of young people will not report until they're an adult. And they have the right to be able to tell their story when they feel safe to do so. So we may not know. We may have a young person growing up in a household where the parent or the carer was a trauma-affected child, and they're parenting with those tools. And then it starts to make sense when we start to get a bigger picture around that. So that young person could internalize and go, well, I'm just a stupid kid, or I never get anything right, or I was told I was just like my father, my mother, my uncle, my aunt, my grandparent. Like, how can a young person work with a myth they can do nothing about? So that intergenerational trauma, that unsafe storytelling, is how a young person brings it back to, who am I and where do I fit in? This is all the work that you're doing just in an assessment. So we jump into strength base and go, you know, you're brave coming in and telling me that story. I want to thank you for that. Acknowledge, believe, build the trust and connection so you can do the other work that you need to do. So it says here that there's been a little bit of trouble at school. I'm just wondering how that's going for you. Okay, so brainstorming. Let's jump out of here. Let's jump into a breakout room. Okay, that's great. I think you're going to have to share that, Shannon, that funny situation as well. So what we might do here is I will pause our recording, and when you come back from the recording, someone is going to lead in as the spokesperson. They're going to go, we jumped into the breakout room, we did this scenario, and here are our key findings. Okay, so I'll pause for the recording and we'll bring this information back to everybody. Okay, so we're back and we're just going to hear from our group about what was it, you know, that you would apply with assessment intake. What are you looking for? How are you going to do it? And then also framing it around a coexisting need, which of course is what our unit is. Who'd like to start?
You guys okay if I go with this one?
Yeah,
Yes,
with it,
please.
Chris. Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So we chose to look at a teenager who wasn't able to live at home any longer. Issues potentially with mum with drug and alcohol abuse, coming in to tell us that they were going to need housing because they weren't able to stay with mum any longer. So we were saying as part of our initial needs assessment, the first thing we would be looking at would be, is that particular person safe tonight? Do they have somewhere safe that they can go? They can spend the night, they can sleep. If they turn around and said no, they didn't, we would then need to organise immediate care for them overnight, particularly too, depending on the age of the actual person. So we were working with somebody that was probably around the age of 16. We would need to potentially, if we were able to offer them a place in a refuge or something like that, reach out to organise that. If that wasn't an option, maybe something like Linked to Home, which is the government body, for them to organise somewhere for them for the night. Then proceeding on from that, once that initial call of "Are you safe tonight?" was looked at, we would then need to look at if there was any form of violence. Is that person safe from violence tonight that may follow them? If they are not safe from violence for the night, we might then need to look at their needs of being to put an AVO or some kind of thing like that, DVO, in place for them. From there, we then went to the concept of their actual mental health and how are they sort of travelling at the moment and what's happening for them. How are they feeling? They mentioned to us when we were talking that we thought it'd be good to look at that, you know, they might want to have a look to be able to live with mum at some point, but they just thought what she was going for at the moment was too much. So therefore, part of the plan we would be looking at would then be family reunification. And what does that look like? And how do we do that moving forward? If that was a process there that was going to take a while, we'd also need to look at what financial assistance does that particular young person need in regards to payments from Centrelink, things like that. And again, then looking forward to, you know, if they were at risk, we would need a mandatory report based on what was disclosed to us. Other things like, did they need to see a doctor, would be a referral out as well. You know, is there drugs and alcohol in that particular person at the moment? What is their actual risk to themselves and to others sitting at right now?
Brilliant. Wow, that was a lot. All of them assessment work too, by the way. So sometimes we don't know why we're asking those questions, but the very first thing you did, which I like to do as well, is risk. So safety first. So right here, right now, then what might be a temporary response like emergency or crisis, just till we can get some other things in place. What can we do right now? So those emerging needs were starting to come through next, which was the actions around it, the client own goals, we're assessing those, and the individualized support plan that we put in place, which is phases as well. So we might just work out what's the right here, right now. Who else might have gone to some of, there was some historical stuff in there as well. I like that. Why would you want to know what's going on, Chris? Where were you headed with that? Why do you want to know if there's alcohol or other things happening in the home?
I want to have a look at the family dynamic. So they've said right now that they can't go home. Why is that? Is there anything we can do then to support that family reunification? What can we offer both that young person and their families so that they can live together, so that homelessness doesn't go? Because we know if somebody around that age of 16, younger or older, can't live at home, then their chances of falling out of high school and becoming unemployed is greater. Permanent or long-term homelessness is greater. They normally don't go and get their licenses or anything at all like that. Ability to get into a well-paying job is reduced as well. So you want to ideally look at what can we do for that family reunification? Is it a case of, you know, if mum is willing, can we offer, you know, parenting courses? Can we offer drug and alcohol counselling? And also, can we offer that child Al-Anon? So, you know, to be family members of people that are, you know, living with an alcoholic, so that that child then also doesn't feel on their own, that they can have a creative and supportive environment there as well.
Yeah, I like that, where you're headed with it, Ken. I'm going to give you that in a scenario then. So if they do need financial assistance, so financial wellbeing is a safety matter as well. Have funds, can make a decision. Don't have funds, can make a decision. What kind of decision, and minimizing that risk to them where they can make some better choices, safer choices. So UTLA is unreasonable to live at home. That's what UTLA stands for, and Centrelink determined that. Now, with that, it can usually take 12 weeks to get a Centrelink application through and get money coming in. They can often, from the date you start the application, backdate it, but we're assessing their needs. So you might be working with someone where it could be 12 weeks and they've got these real pressing needs right now. So some places like a refuge will spot them for that. And there's no income, but a refuge must still have a rent paid. I think it's about, I don't know, our local one here is about, I think it's $250 a fortnight. And they work for that, but it's everything. Workers, get them to and from, all their food, all their needs met. And then some young people, and they don't press on it, but some young people can actually provide that, like a back payment. It could be about $3,500 when it comes in. Some young people will pay that. They'll go, no, this is what I owe you for while I was here. And so that will depend on the young person and the relationship. So there is a buffer around that as well. But here's the gap. When it's UTLA, it can be done in 28 days, but you also need to be able to have done an assessment. It can't be a young person goes, I can't go home. Okay, so I'll circle back to that one for everybody, and I'll give you a scenario to take back into a breakout room, and I want to hear how you're going to view that if you are the intake and assessment person. So with that, who else had something to bring out? Chris, that was a really good snapshot and summary. Anything else to add? Was there something there that perhaps you felt wasn't covered in that sort of feedback then? Amanda, did that kind of cover everything you wanted to put in? Oh, sorry, we've got no sound.
Sorry, technical difficulties. I definitely feel like, yeah, Chris covered a lot of it. I think we were just, we spoke about our individual circumstances, how that can vary, and that's a very important thing to acknowledge and to establish for the individual. And just obviously our reporting it's an imperative part of it all, like reporting our findings. Yeah. And I think that was everything. That was what we spoke about.
Pretty good. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we have two options. You can have a 10-minute break, or we can keep going. It's up to you. Are we okay to keep going? I want to give you a scenario and throw you back into a breakout room.
I'm happy to keep going, guys, if you do for a minute while we're fresh.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah,
I was going to jump off, but you guys, I've just got to step out for a second, and then you guys can go in, and I'll be back.
No worries.
Cool.
So just join when you're ready, or join and then go off camera and sound if you like.
Yeah, I'll just go off camera and sound.
Okay. All right. So what I want to do is quickly give you this scenario. 16-year-old boy. You've heard me talk about this young person before. Male, self-placed, with childhood mate. Okay. Applying for UTLA. Social worker from Centrelink calls you. You know this. I'm going to tell you. You know that family are survivors of serious domestic family violence. You know that young person has been targeted by the offender who no longer lives at the house, where there is an order of no contact from the family court, plus a protection order from the family court. There is also a district magistrate protection order. It is still current. That young person is named in that protection order with the 4 children. He is one, but he is now run. He's gone, not going to live at home. So been living with his childhood mate, had sleepovers all his life. The primary parent knows where the young person is still the legal guardian. The young person is still going to school, but has gone from the excellence program, already been given funding from a university, currently in grade 11 already. So definitely targeted as a high achieving accelerator program. They've gone from A+ to a B. They have gone from always being at school on time to sometimes being late while they're staying with their friends. The family are not communicating with the primary parent. I will gender identify here, the mother, I will say. And the named person on that domestic family violence order, the family that young person is staying with is giving that named person on the order access to this child. They are physically driving this child to the house of the known offender who is named on a protection order and is not to have any contact. So if that happens, say a young person is a runner and they go and track down this person named on the order, the law requires that that parent turns that young person away. You can't be here, that there's an order in place, it places me at risk. They must have some evidence that they turned them away. That is not the case. They are staying there overnight. They are in photos. These photos are being shared up on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. So the young person has now gone in with this family, and they've applied for unreasonable to live at home. So an assessment has to be done. And it's not a person face to face. It's, I'm doing the application, that's great. A social worker is going to call you, but you now know the story. You're the youth worker. You have a bit of background. You've been working with this family for 5 years. You have walked beside them when the offending parent was charged. They downgraded it from strangulation to serious violent assault. They were not incarcerated. They were released into the community on parole and breached within 48 hours and have been breaching since 2019 regularly. They have been grooming, coercing, using third parties, all against the law, to engage with that young person, that young male, since the age of 12. And the young person who had been beaten by that parent as well, which is why they're named, very rarely, less than 4% of parents are given no contact in the family court, because it's actually about the child's relationship to have with both parents, if it is safe to do so. The court deemed it was not safe and never would be safe for that young person that's already there. Some courts will go, yes, I can, if they get the help they need, because often offenders are from victim to offender, but this is not that. This cannot be workshopped out. So we're looking at psychopathy here. The court psychiatrist has done the assessment, the clinical diagnosis, interviewed everybody, no contact, plus a 5-year protection order that the federal police can come in. However, it's all quite different. So on a local level, this young kid, self-placed. So was the young person assaulting the mother? Yes, they were. Were they smashing holes in the wall? Yes, they were. Was this traumatizing for the mother? 100%. The love and deep need to protect those children from that person re-traumatizes that parent each and every time. So you now, you know this story, you know what a great kid they are, you know that they're being influenced by this external thing, and they're not coming back to you. You're working with the family and the early intervention prevention stuff for the next siblings coming through, who likely will be picked off by the same offender unless that offender is held to account. Now, our role is we haven't got those powers. All we can do is report, mandatory reporting to the required, or support that client to do that reporting themselves. Okay, so we've emphasized the need for this, but rather than us mandatory report, we're saying this is harm to self or others, let's report. So that is reported. That's mandatory reporting. Your file notes will document that. You will also let your line manager and supervisor know this is what we're doing, but they want that reporting. They want to be protected by the police. They want the authorities to know. This isn't like I'm going to tell them, you know, they want that. So you do that with them. Mandatory reporting is not always seen as a punitive thing. It's often, can you help me report this? I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. He will
So,
hate me. Yeah.
Vicky, is this his father?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. His father has and is 15 minutes away in a car. So it takes an adult. You've got a 16-year-old kid with no car, no driver's license. So relies on third party, other people to do that. So the third party, they've walked into Centrelink and said, here's my version of events. And then they have to come back to the parent, the guardian, the legal guardian of that young person, and say, now they've taken stories from the school. Were the school there in the trauma counselling? No. Have the school only got the version of events from that young person? Yes. So their third party acting on behalf of that young person, advocating for him. Oh, this is terrible. If this really happened, is what other people don't do. This is you as a youth worker. This is what assessment is all about. Did this really happen? That's why we've got to be, it's got to be evidence-based. It's got to be factual. So let's say you're now just about to get a phone call from the social worker. Hi, I wanted to be able to talk. So first of all, they call the mother. Okay, the mother, have someone in the group and say what the mother is. What do you think the mother would want to say or have been known to that person from their version of events? They were there. It's been through the courts, known offender, released into the community, but sentenced, has a criminal record, currently under a court order. Okay, breaching that order, yet to be charged. Okay, investigation underway. First time this was lodged with the police was December 2022. It is now May 2024, still nothing. So from the mother's perspective, and you are the social worker, okay, like someone's got to be the social worker, but you're going to be, one will be the social worker, one will be the mother, one will be the youth worker, or more than one person as the youth worker. This is your assessment work. So social worker is going to say, I just need to get some information from you. So you're doing assessment as the social worker. You're also reflecting and giving information and assessing what you think might be those risks, all those things that Chris raised. What's the immediate emerging issue that we need to deal with right now? We can look at further down, but right here, right now, this is about, are we going to give that young person, and this is public funds, the mother was in receipt of 200 and something a fortnight, I think 225 under the family tax benefit, has handed that over to the young person straight away. Okay, so gave the young person that money. Absolutely no argument whatsoever, wants them to have that. But now that young person is coming in with that 225 a fortnight, self-placed. The mother wants this young boy home with proper supports available. It's been seeing a psychiatrist and a trauma specialist since he was 12. That's all gone now. He will not allow that parent to parent him. Other people are in that space. So, so I guess the other thing is she wants him home, but now he's applying for an additional $570 a fortnight, more than what he was bringing into the family household, because UTLA is an independent payment. It is deemed under assessment as unreasonable to live at home. So you, or the social worker who's stepping into this, nominate whoever you think you want to do that and ask those questions. I think anyone who's already working in the sector might be a good fit. to be able to go through some of the protocols. And then also, so you've got your social worker, you've got your mother, and you've got 1 or 2 youth workers. No young person is there. Okay. The social worker needs to gather information. What information do you want to influence the social worker with so that they can complete their assessment? Now, as a youth worker, you may be called upon many times to be a third party. I understand you're working with young Billy. Yes, have been for 5 years, since 2018. Okay, so they've applied for unreasonable to live at home, and the mother has, the youth worker, the mother, because every parent has a right to say yes or no. That doesn't mean that the decision won't be made. The social
I was
worker,
about to ask you that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, because
you're not.
the parent has to sign that off, don't they? They need to give permission for that to happen. Is that right?
No, that is
No,
not right.
okay.
They
Yeah.
like to, they give them the opportunity, but what they're
Yeah.
doing is they're gathering all the information, and the social worker has to make that assessment, Joe.
Okay. And because other situations that I've heard is depending on like the parent's income as well,
Yes.
whether they're able to access that money, like that
Absolutely.
payment.
Yep, absolutely. Because in the eyes of Centrelink, you are financially responsible for your children up to and including the age of 24. Why would the taxpayer pay that amount?
Yeah.
We're not going to. So only independent living. So this is the assessment process. It's got to have rigor. It's got to be able to test it, because a parent could disagree and appeal that, lodge a complaint, and that could go to a legal team. So your work here as a youth worker has got to be solid. So, so you've got to know what it is that you have got to say, only the facts. Yes, I have been working with that family since 2018. Yes, I am aware that that is a vulnerable young person. No, I do not support that the young person has nowhere to live and is unsafe, which would, of course, get unreasonable to live at home, 100%. But are the other siblings, with all of this violence towards a mother, is that re-traumatizing this parent who has already gone through this? This may call for respite rather than a permanent solution. And this is where I want you to go with it. What else could be in this place at the moment? So make your recommendations in this space. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So I'm aware of this. This is a current case. I'm de-identifying. So in this current case, and this only happened, the call came in on Friday, usually as it does, 4:45 in the afternoon. And it came from somewhere in Australia, not local, no social worker known to me. I have the mobile numbers of the social worker in our local Centrelink office. That's your network and collaboration unit, guys. So, but it goes both ways. Make a withdrawal, make a deposit. So can you do me a favor? This is how that works, all right? Tier 1 workers. However, in this case, this is about knowing your stuff. What you think could be beneficial for that family under this situation. You're now advocating to not remove that young person away from the family, or you might go, no, I would support that. There's no right or wrong answer here. I can only work on the knowledge and the skills that I have in that space. But when they called the mother, she said, I want you to speak to my advocate. Our advocate has been walking beside this for 5 years. You, as a youth worker, are the advocate.
So is this woman and man, like, so he's been breaching all this time, are they like together in the house? Is she still in love with him? Is that
No.
part of the, like, is he still
No.
living?
No, divorced, property
Okay.
settled, everything.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Trying
Yeah.
to stay protected. Absolutely not.
Okay.
That is not what it is. There's no happy ever after, let me get mum and dad back together again, and the parents, you know, working with the kids and sending them out there to do their flying monkey work. This is a dangerous, convicted criminal.
So this man's turning up, breaching AVOs and all the other orders at the family home.
Well, not since it's 2 years since they went to the family home, but they're using third parties, and that's also against the law.
Yes.
So where he's staying, they're friends. And they're helping the offender and giving the offender access, which is against the order, the wording of the order. No third party can be used, no contact. So their hands are clean, absolutely. Oh, you're not going to catch me with them, but there's photos that exist, and that forms part of the evidence. So what you say now will either support that or discredit that. You know, so here's all the other 3 people who have given. They've got to go to 3. So they go to the GP, they're going to the family GP. They're going to speak to the mother, which they did, and then the mother referred them to the advocate, which is myself in this case. So as a youth worker, though, a youth worker advocate for all of the family, in the interest of that child, staying over at a friend's place where they had lots of sleepovers since the kids were in nappies, and it was reciprocated. One of the parents has remarried, so the new wife has decided that that will be the work that they do. They believe that what they're doing is in the best interest of that child. They're not working with all of the information. They're only working with the information that the young person has said, and it could very well be believed by that young person too, by the way. We're not saying the young person is a liar. We're just saying that young person can no longer live at home. They have left. The behaviours, the acting out, the trauma effect that they have been, that is there because they're in a very dangerous situation, needing to demonstrate their loyalty to the person named on that order. Oh, my father hated me all my life. He used to punch me, hit me, hurt me, and now my father loves me. Wow. Who am I going to go to? This person that I've wanted all my life to love me, accept me, this person is there. This is like a dream come true. When it happens to young people, they blame themselves. They believe what is said by the offender. Okay, so what I want you to do is pick the role that you're most comfortable with. And as a youth worker, you can't talk about anything other than the facts. As I've given them to you. You don't have the facts. I've given you a summary. That's all you get when you're a youth worker, is a little bit of information. That's all you get on a scenario sheet. Is young person comes in, we're going to do an assessment, we've got coexisting needs. I'll start you off. What are the coexisting needs for this young person? So Chris mentioned financial. That's a coexisting need. Let's get to what we're being asked, not having an opinion in this, what we're being asked. So financial is one. There could be some risk to safety. That's the other one that you guys did in your first breakout room. They're the coexisting needs. We don't go anywhere else. So it's up to the social worker to ask the questions. Okay, so depending on who jumps in, like I'm really mindful that this is hard going territory for us. A lot of workers come into this space. I am one of those who may have a lived experience, but the knowledge skills that I developed over the years still keeps me safely in that space. We talked about how do we look after ourselves? So it's our self-care around it. So the words don't get stuck. We aren't impacted. The imprint is not coming to us because I'm working to a framework. I'm hearing what it is. It's like, what are they really asking? So they're just asking for the facts. I have knowledge about that family. Yes, here are the things that we have put in place. This is what we hope, which is hope and healing. Fine to talk like that. The mother knows that the young person is safe. And I'll give you another thing, this strategy, which I knew this was coming. So what was the preventative stuff to get ahead? As a youth worker, we often might do that. They have been depositing $20, which has been quite a hardship for her, per week into a bank account. And Michelle, you touched on that. You said it depends on the parent's income. But if the family are financially still providing for that young person, they can't get it. And if the mother doesn't want them to have that extra, only have what they're entitled to, because somewhere in 90 days, that young person could return home with the proper care and all the supports that you as a youth worker have put in place with them, and the mother has decided to put action. So there is an individual support plan, but that's not what the social worker is calling us about. They're doing an assessment. Will I approve this payment? That's the only work we've got to do. So now it's about your assessment on this situation based with a youth worker hat on. Not Michelle, not Amanda, not Shannon, not Vicky. I've got views, but I can only take that into the space, because if I don't, they'll say I have a bias or I have an unconscious bias that's coming through. It cannot be that. It must be the duty of care around that young person and the work that you're working on with the family already. You can only talk about what you see, what has been done, what has been stated. That's it. We can't bring in, we could use hope and healing words like what we'd really like to be able to see is these wraparound supports. What we'd really like to have happen is some time to review that and see if this is just time out, respite. Everybody have a bit of a break. This is not self-placed in an unsafe thing. That's not in question here. This is about money and the risk to safety. Now, the only thing that is a risk is that these people are giving access to a known offender and breaching a law. And they know that. That is not a secret to them. So it's only illegal if you knew that an order existed. If you didn't know, you're not held to account at all. You've done nothing wrong. It's like nobody told me that. But if you knew, then you are breaking the law. Intent is important in this space.
And they do know in this situation?
100% they know.
That's crap if they were friends all those years.
Not the new wife. So the boy, yes, definitely the boy is friends. And yes, hard. But when domestic family violence happens, Michelle, people pick sides.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not what's in question. There's all those layers, but they get in the way of assessment. That's not the work we're doing here.
Yeah.
We have to come at this analytically, factually, and these are the tools that we're working with right now in this unit. This is a really tough one.
Yeah.
It's actually more common than what you think.
So it's all coming down to UTLA, whether we approve the UTLA.
We're just giving our view while they're gathering the information to make their assessment. So, but we've been in this space and we've got an assessment. We're working on that. So we're sharing that information.
Yeah.
Because we've been asked to. And as a worker to a government department, we must provide that. So I'm going to jump out. I'm going to pause recording and everyone will bring this back. So we're back. We went in with the scenario around assessment. We've found the coexisting needs, financial and risk to safety. And that's your consideration. I did drop in that if you're depositing $20 into a bank account and still financially supporting that young person, so it doesn't even have to be money. It could be hygiene products and shampoo, conditioners, jocks, socks, that sort of thing, paying school fees. Oh, you are still prepared to financially support that child. So that is what's in that space. Okay, so that can be in there as well. But for us and for the purpose of this exercise, which is around coexisting needs and assessment. Please bring back and share what it is from the perspectives that you took in this space.
Well, I can say from my perspective that this is right out of my scope, so I'd refer it back to you.
I mean, what we said, Vicky, was like we were all very similar in that how much can we say to the social worker within the confines of privacy and confidentiality? Like, are we allowed to say to the social worker with the history we knew of this family and the child, look, he's left, like he's had this issue going on for years, but it's being, what was the word you used? It's, what was that word you used where that woman's allowing, what's the word you use?
Enabling.
Yeah, enabling, like, and you know, so that man comes and the father sees the son. I mean, for me, as a youth worker, I'd be wanting to get that child out of that situation.
Okay, so
away from the enabling.
Okay, let's woo up. That's not what we're in there for. All we can do is tell the social worker, I hear you, and you and I, we'd be in the staff room 100% talking about this, Michelle.
Yeah.
I'd be right there with you. Okay.
Yeah, and didn't I say, Shannon, and to, I've gone blank, the other lady.
It's okay, Amanda.
Amanda,
okay.
Thanks. That when I said that, I went, we can't do that. This is about the financial. Yeah.
For an assessment, no, financial is okay in there. So here is how it's language. So this has been historically a very long-term situation. This is very complex. And remember, what were we asked to do? So we're only asked as another person to give our assessment on this. So, and hope and healing language can come in there as well. The mother hopes to. We've been working with the family for a long time. Yes, I am aware it's been, there's been a lot of supports in place for that young person. The mother has been contributing financially, $200, a full amount that they had put aside for them. And lovingly, he went and bought Easter eggs for his siblings. So he wants to be connected, but it's kind of like my plan was to get out, which could very well have been good. But did somebody groom him? Is there coercive control going on here? Is this his ultimate decision? Or were there other people working towards this for a completely different agenda? We can have our opinions, but that is not what we can say.
Yeah, because I was going to say it's just about stating the facts around the assessments and the work that you've done with the families. And I guess you'd be just stating to them about your case notes and things that those factual, statements and assessments and notes that you've written over those 5 years, I guess, to really be substantial into why. Like you said, you can't say that I don't want him there, but this is all the evidence around that. That's the way I kind of would see it.
So a good way to do that is, look, I think it's too soon. That's all I said. I think it's too soon. I think that everybody needs a little bit of time away. And given he's been staying sleepovers there since he was a kid in nappies, and that's been both, there's a really long connection there. This is just a long sleepover at the moment. And we're certainly working towards that. Mum, can you make a doctor's appointment for me? Mum, can you do this? Mum, can you get my shirts I left in the cupboard? So that doesn't sound yet like it's all over. Okay. To me, there's hope and healing, and I look for that. So that's what I portray to the social worker. I say, look, there has been contact, and that has come from both. And the mother is getting extra support, gone back to their trauma counsellors at the Domestic Family Violence Service. The mother is contributing and putting money into that account. The mother, the family doctor who has been with the children since they were the size of a jelly bean, all of that we can get that person also to third party. So the social worker has to be satisfied that this is not an emotive conversation, that this is a factual conversation, a summary. And this is what we'd like to give the family an opportunity to do the hope and the healing, that and the mother believing that the young person is in the right house. However, there's other things happening there which the social worker needs to be made aware of, and also the reporting that has happened. So what has happened? What else?
Vicky, can I?
Yeah.
Sorry. With when you're talking to the social worker or the one from Centrelink, could you use that his attendance at school is dropping and his grades are dropping, so sort of like they give us like a view of what's happening with him being out of the home? And
yeah. However, that's not a full stop. But yes, Shannon, definitely how we say that has to be where there is no bias in it. It's like we've gone from when still at home, even though the challenges were there, we've gone from an A+ student in an accelerator program, already commencing some of their uni studies and on a full scholarship. So even the 2 years they're in high school, and then when they go to uni, full scholarship, everything, accommodation, absolutely everything. That's how bright this boy is. Okay. However, complex. So we would say, yes, gone from that program and full attendance to, now getting grades of like around the B+ and that, and arriving late at school. Now that in isolation could be, oh, that's something, but not in this case. That's for you as a youth worker to have an understanding and monitor. Like maybe the pressure being in that accelerator program is too much. We don't know yet. And this is where we jump into coexisting needs. What else is going on? We don't know that yet ourselves. We're just watching. So we're going, okay, so it's that. But could that take a little bit of pressure off for the moment? And if the uni are calling the mother and then the uni are talking to the young person, they could be very, very well be saying, look, I'm fine. I can pick that back up. I've just got some personal stuff I've got to sort out first. That could be their conversation. They're having that separately with the student support people at the university. That young person is finding their way and finding their voice. Okay, this could be good for everybody, but this is not what's the conversation. The assessment work is, are they eligible for unreasonable to live at home? And what's your gut say? Yes or no?
my gut says no. No, he doesn't need it because he's going to be in a worse situation where he's going to than where he is. But I know that's a personal thought.
That's us in the workplace. Hey, Shannon, I totally agree where you're coming from. How can we frame this, though, where it doesn't look like, of course, we can be really passionate about our clients and we're there. This is heart work you do. You can't remove that from it. But there's a time and a place, not in our written notes, because I've already said that could be used 27 years' time. If something ever happens to that young person or that young person ever does something, what you write now in those file notes could end up being used as evidence in court.
And for me, like professionally, it comes back down to that risk, that child being at risk in that situation. And then whether you do refer, because obviously the child is wanting to see that offender and whether there are programs or something that offender can attend for that to continue. Or like I didn't hear the start of what had happened.
Case, in this case, no, but you're absolutely right. Could there be, given that at 16, like you can't make a 6'4", 16-year-old boy who's built come back to the family home. They'll just run anyway.
Yeah.
Running safely is what you're doing. So you're absolutely right. It's about the risk. So but that's not our decision. It's not what we're being asked. We're being asked to state the financial eligibility, financial, so that's all. And then also the coexisting needs. So if we jump into that space there, the only things that they're asking is not at home. And the not at home bit is about, is it unreasonable for them to live at home? Now, what if, let's have a look at it from another perspective, what if you were working with the young person and you had no contact with the mother? All you know is this kid comes in and goes, my mother told all these lies about my dad. That's what dad said. I want to see my dad and she won't let me. I'm not allowed to. She keeps saying other stuff. But I think that I think she lied in court and it's not fair. All of that is crazy talk. She just convinced them. Okay. Lots of conversations are heard about people who don't believe what they said in court. So you don't have that evidence. So you can't talk about it. All you can do is talk about the client. So if the young person is your client, rather than the mother of that young person, where you've seen that family for the last 5 years, so you've seen that one since they were 12, and when the charges were laid, one of them was 7 months old in pregnancy, so in utero, not yet born when the strangulation was happening. So all of that, so you have been in that space for 5 years as a worker. That's the notes. It might not have been you. It could be someone else's notes. And you're going, okay, from what I can see here, I've been working with the family only for the last 6 months. They have none of that information. So we can't have an opinion about it anyway. Even if we did sit in there for 5 years, we can't share a narrative. We can only say, based on what unreasonable to live at home is, respite, definitely acknowledging that everyone is just at that real end of their wits, and self-placement without having any family. This is not a family placement. This is a mate. However, there's a risk factor in here that I need to raise, and so we're working very, very hard. It's complex, and it's been sitting there for a long time. What else might you say to the social worker?
Well, you'd certainly, I think you said it, Vicky, you can certainly say that there's hope there because the child's accepting money from the mother and the mother is lovingly sending money to help support the son, no matter how little the money is. So there's still that bond there.
You just took the words straight out of my mouth. I was just about to say that. Like, they're still connected to the family.
Yeah.
They're still getting that money. And I know, Vicky, you'd mentioned something about getting shirts or something, asking the mum to do that. And that just, to me, speaks volumes around that connection and the importance of that still being with that child and the mother.
Yeah. So allowing the parent to parent. Mum, can you get me this? Can you book me an appointment with the doctor that we've got? I can do that. All of that. So I've got to be away from all this stuff. Okay, so self-place. We've also an understanding. So the body of work that you might be doing has been with the mother. In this case, it is. It has always been the kids, but only from the time they turn 12. We don't have any other history. I have never been in that space. All I know is the story, but I've read the evidence in the court documents. So I believe that to be factual. But that is not what's in there. I can speak to the facts. I cannot speak to my opinion about that at all. Even when you are supporting someone, it's never about your opinion. It never leaves my lips. My opinion about that. We walk beside our clients. We look at their needs. In this unit, it is coexisting needs, and we're assessing all the time within the scope of our role. And only that, nothing more. Why are we employed? We are employed to whatever our position description says we can do. And if we work outside of that, And if we have opinions, so a lot of people want to be believed in this space, we can do that. I believe you. I'm validating you here. That sounds tough. Gosh, you've been through a lot. Sincere, genuine, as lived experience survivor, I'm telling you, that matters. And how can you best help somebody is not by diving in there. You have to be the solid ground, and you only advocate youth work to support them. So when someone asks you, only give the facts. Long term, very high and complex needs, current police investigation around some breaches needs further investigation. I'm not saying they're breaching, I'm just saying there's current investigation. Those have been reported to the authorities. The mother is doing all the mandatory reporting. We walk beside them. So no one is protecting. But that was a really good point you made, Michelle. I liked where you were coming from. Does she still love him? And like, that's nothing to do with us, because that's entirely up to them. We don't have an opinion about that. Do we sometimes think that maybe they will go back? Not this case, but in some, absolutely. People are going to try and make things work. If the data is that it takes 7 times to leave, that means they've returned 6, still for all the right reasons. But if we bring it back to just, you could still co-parent safely, but the courts will decide if it's safe to do so. And it's that person's role to prove that there's evidence of it not being safe.
Could you not think, with us knowing that history, and you're saying just keep the youth worker hat on, and knowing that there's still that bond there between mother and son, but there's a big risk factor, as you said, like at the other end, but basing it on the facts, could you not say, look, this child obviously needs some space at the moment, but there's still the bond happening between the mother and son, which is great. Like, hasn't been disconnected. There's hope for down the track, because, this child could actually possibly go back to the family unit. But when they, I think he might, like, it appears, I shouldn't say I think, it appears the child wants some space. He wants some space.
Yeah, it's okay. You can say, if you're asking for my professional view on this, you can say it like that.
Okay.
Rather than I think, as in Michelle. If you go, look, based on everything that we've been working on, it is my opinion. You're the professional. It is my opinion. That matters. They called you. They want it. It is my view that this might be too soon. Does it meet the threshold of unreasonable to live at home? I don't think it does. They've asked you for your third-party opinion, but we don't add all the others. We don't give an opinion and then justify our opinion. That's the thing that we've got to stop ourselves from jumping in there, because that is not youth worker. That is Michelle, or that is Vicky, or that's Shannon, or Joe, or Amanda. That's not what they're calling for. Why? And I'll bring you back to, you've watched me put this in before. WAIT. Why am I talking? What was the question? Why? They're talking because they want to know something, if this person meets the threshold of unreasonable to live at home. And there are plenty of young people that I have supported that in that comment. I'll say, based on the information that I've been working with, it does appear that young person is at risk at home. And, like a parent might go, yeah, we can't have them back, but that mother in this case does not want to say that. That would be saying, I want them to still have access. They're in danger. Those words will not leave their lips. On the other hand, though, when they're ready to go to uni, yeah, of course they're going to leave home. But that's a planned, coordinated, collaborated goal that they've been making together as a family. But if the young person thinks, I cannot do this on a day-to-day, his voice in this space is also being assessed by that social worker. So that's not our job, that's the social worker's job. We only have to speak to what we know. But they've asked. Look, there is contact. That certainly shows me that the young person is still wanting to have connection. So not
Yeah.
um,
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah.
yeah. So are they at a different residential address at the moment? Yes. Is that long term? Not in my opinion. I just think this is a cooling off period and is worth reviewing in 90 days. Now, if at the 90 days they do review it again and it looks like that young person's not coming home, then all of the supports that you could put in place for the family and the young person, if they give you permission, they may not work with you again because they'll think you're just trying to make me do something I don't want to do. And you can lose a young person over this. So it's like, I'm not here to tell you what to do, mate. That's not what I'm here for. I just want you to know, no matter what, you can still access our support. We're not here to take sides. We're here to help you. Make sure you've got the resources and the information and support that you need. That's it. That's our role. Coexisting needs. So do we stop being the youth worker because they changed their residential address? No. We can still work with the mother and still work with that young person if they give you permission to do that. But if they hear in our language, we're just trying to get them home or try to stop them from having that, like, that's not our role as a youth worker. But the safety absolutely is. Has mandatory reporting been done over this? Within 30 seconds flat, I can tell you. Absolutely. Straight on that phone. Vulnerable persons unit at the police station. Would it interest you to know? That's all I do. I'm not saying I've got the evidence. Would it interest you to know? I would like to report a potential breach. So it's an allegation. We haven't got the evidence. Who does that work? The police. Who does the assessment? The social worker. Not our decision to make. Why am I talking? They ask me something, only answer that. The best person in a courtroom, when you're asked to actually give evidence, your best answers are yes, no, I don't recall at the moment. That's it. That makes you an excellent witness. Only answer the questions that you are asked.
You got to have a very strong backbone.
Just have good professional boundaries,
Yeah.
amazing skills. That's what we're doing. We're working inside our legal. Now, the struggle will be the ethical stuff.
Yeah.
But why am I talking in the court like this, with the social worker like this? Not everybody gets everything. And do I have that young person's consent? I don't. I cannot talk about it. Even if the mother says, please call my youth worker, they'll whatever, I don't have consent. I can't talk about that young person. Nothing about me without me. I can report my concerns around risk, but I cannot speak for that young person.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give my opinion on that. I'm only going to give the facts. Otherwise, that makes me having a bias, or my lens is it's leaning one way over the other. But safety is safety is safety. I can measure that.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, with that, would you be able to say, like, your concerns of if it was continued to be that way, what the outcomes for this young person might? Yeah. So that's not putting your bias in.
That is me, mandatory reporting. It's important that I let you know that the risk assessment on this, Chris started the night with safety first, that we're still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important for me to let you know that there is a risk assessment around this and it's a known risk. There's evidence to support that. That's undeniable. It's on the police records.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
That went into the public arena, the case. That's not hidden. That's not under locked file. That hit the media. So big time. So I'm only sharing what anyone could get that information if they chose to. They've got the name, they've got the date of birth, they've got the addresses, they've got everything. When the social worker gives that call, I don't give any of that information away. That's not my space. I'm not breaching anything, but I have a duty of care to report if I believe that that young person is at risk. Who do I tell? I tell that person in that conversation, but I've already reported it to child safety and the police. As a youth worker, already done. And so I just tell them I have concerns around the risk and here are the actions that I have taken.
Okay.
I think it's important that I let you know that there's a current investigation. The coexisting needs. He is after some increase in finances. So if he was working with the worker, they'd say, get a part-time job, buddy. Here, let me help you update your resume. Practical strategies, that's where your work would go. Not, oh, we need to get your mother to change her mind so that she's stopping me from getting that money, all that sort of thing. Like, that's narrative, that's opinion based.
Yeah, so it would be moving away from that and giving him independence to then go on and work. Is that like where you're going with that?
Yeah, if he doesn't return to the family home, that's still not our role. Other people have to take that action based on the laws that there. They could self-place again. I've not known of, say, in this instance, I've not known of a 16-year-old to go into foster care or an out-of-home residential. Chris is our expert in that space. Amanda, unless you've got that knowledge. No, not your area. Yeah. It's not mine, by the way. I've had plenty of 15-and-a-half-year-olds on UTLA come and stay in our residential program, but ours aren't placed by child safety. So they tend to not do that. Like, that kind of stops at about 14. 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, they can be pretty mobile, you know, couch surf with friends and things like that. Not always wanted, you know, where child safety step in. I'm not going to say no because I don't have that information, but so I don't talk to it. I just say, I actually don't know what the eligibility would be for them to do an intake and assessment in this situation. That's it. So, but would I tell the young person? This might be something that perhaps if you talk to someone at child safety and see what the options might be, because you are still under 18 years of age. So we're just giving information, informed decision making. There's still a minor under 18. What's our job though? We're not going to say go home to your mother because it actually may not be healthy for anybody at the moment. But we are going to say if there's something that has to be reported. But we'd encourage the parent to report that themselves. The other parent is not reporting that. I'm baffled why there's photos with the date stamp on it as evidence around that, but that is not what the social worker is asking us. So this is about assessment work. Not easy, complex. That's what we say. We'll say this is high and complex needs work. So this is about, when going back to the beginning when we talk about caseload, this is about Chris saying, I've got 20 something, and they could all be really high and complex, but you can have 2 workers and someone, I could have 310, that was my caseload number. But what am I doing? I'm just talking to them once every 6 weeks. I'm a hairdresser of 32 years before I came into the community sector. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask them if they want a cup of tea or coffee.
Yeah.
My desk and break the ice. So the first thing I did. But in that skill and that trade, they let a perfect stranger touch them, actually restrict them. I throw something around their neck. So you're in that chair and I'm confronting, you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Now, unless you love yourself, that's not a natural thing to do other than, okay, yeah, but my face is on, I'm going. That's it. Usually sitting there, looking at yourself in a mirror with a perfect stranger, putting their hands on your body, that's a kind of trust connection thing very quickly. That's why those skills transferred over really easily into this sector. It's like, I've got to be able to do that quickly. Then everything I do, I'm being watched the whole time. And I've got to do it working to really tight deadlines and probably have 4 or 5 clients all on the go at the same time. So that it was such an easy move over, because it's still heart work that you're doing. You know, it's still listening and finding out and delivering and meeting expectations, working within the guidelines. But so it's you know, your skills, Michelle, where you come from, Shannon, yours, they all transfer and fit perfectly inside this. Perfectly. It's just you're learning the tools. What can I say? What can I do? And it's repeat. It's not different case, different skills. Every case, same skills. You just have to learn this. Then you're going to hear 100 stories. I'm going to tell you to look after your mental health and well-being, your own psychological safety, but it's the one skill applied all the time. That's your professional boundary. That is what will help you in this. You could dive in and hear that story, and you can come out and you can do your breathing and you can go, oh, that was a hard one. I'm going outside and shake that one off. Yeah, but what am I there to do? What is my work? My work is this and only this. So you've got to build resilience and agility in this and not lose track. Don't go down there with them. Stay on solid ground. That's what your clients need from you. They need to know you know your job and you help and support them by doing your job. This is their life they're living, and we respect that. We don't make judgment. Do people do things that I wish that they didn't do? All the time, all the time. And I just go, I try and be ahead of it. I go, this is what it's going to look like. So I'm saying, put $20 in a bank account every week. It's going to get tight financially, but do that. Okay, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Then when you get that phone call from a social worker, you can say, I am financially contributing to my child and I'm paying the school fees. That's enough, because they don't want them to get given that money because they are still in that place of hope. But if they go, no, I don't want them back, that's their call, not ours. And then you report whatever it is that you need to report, and you walk beside them so that they can make sure the child is safe. Now, they were told 5 years ago this child would be a runner. They were told that. I said it. Other people said it. They were told that because the parent, that known parent, picked every child off. So there's 6 altogether, picked off the first 2 from the age of 12, did exactly the same. So their MO is exactly the same. So there's a pattern. So I'm going, so you knew this was coming. That's all we've got to do. Yep. What's the plan? So we started doing that work early. It's never easy when it comes up. What's your work? Your work is to support that person. Who is your primary client? All of the children that are still living at home that are not yet 12. Helping the parent so that the relationship, now they may not come home, they may get placed elsewhere, but the relationship stuff is the ongoing work that you're going to be able to do. And so by helping the parent, then it helps the child. There's a ripple effect that you do. So we aren't necessary, and the schools have got amazing, like Joe, Chris, both working in schools, amazing workers. They're not going to jump in and say, oh, that's terrible. How could your mother do that? They're never going to say that. They're just going to go, sounds like you're going through a really hard time at the moment. What can I do? What kind of support can I give you? Never, ever are we going to sit in that space, even though you might think it. But that's not our role. Why am I talking? What did they ask? What's my assessment? Your professional assessment around this. Really, really important and valuable. Only the facts. And if you haven't got the facts, you can't report. It's not a report if it's a narrative. Okay, so that is probably what Chris would say, the pointy end. Joe would say the pointy end. And then Chris will go, this is not the pointy end over here. But, you know, over a 25-year history in this space, I step away from it often. I've gone out and I've only worked with over 45s just to have a rest. You know, it's like, oh, can't do it, too much. But we're talking, remember how I said to you, we work with our demographic and our psychographic. Okay, so how many stories can I hear today? So it's like, oh, time out, well-being day, mental health day. Just catch your breath, do those things when we're not at work.
We were actually talking about this before, Chris, Amanda, and I in the breakout rooms, about our age demographic of children that we work with. So, and I guess that brings it back to that as well, doesn't it? Like, it's, yeah, you got to look at both of it.
Absolutely. We do coexisting needs
Mm.
is look at these layers when we're in there. So predominantly, who do I work with? 17 to 19-year-old boys. 95% of my target group, my demographic and my psychographic, are 17 to 19-year-old boys. It's my favorite area as well. So I love working with them. They're incredible, amazing. So you can be a male in this sector and a female in this sector. It doesn't matter. It's like your area. You will find your niche, whatever that is. And that's important. So when you go for a job interview them too. This isn't just, oh, pick me. Really think about, what do I want to do in my day? You know, like, have a think about that going through one door to get to the dream one. If it takes you a bit of time to get there, do that. Like, you're doing a diploma in youth work, you will have that platform. It might be, I've got to get there just to get in the door and then I'll go to there. But everything you're doing in here is because you went for a diploma, not a Cert 4. So you're in that higher level that you're working with. You're getting depth of breaking it down. Cert 4 is still amazing, but it's form filling. It's going here or taking them shopping or doing those sorts of things. And that's great. And you can still do that with a diploma. If you go, I actually want to go with this, but it'll give you that high level when you're ready to be team leader or a program manager, or your opinion in that space is going to have that depth of understanding. It'll be in the language that you're picking up in your studies and your assessments, that how you talk will be different when you're in there. So what if we covered tonight? High and complex needs. We've talked about demographic, psychographic. We're talking about what we can and what we cannot say. There's an expectation when you're in this space that we work within the legal and ethical framework. We understand what mandatory reporting is. We know what consent is. We know what a breach of privacy is. Nothing about me without me is how I'm going to hold that space for that young person, regardless of what's happening for them in that family. But the safety, I've got a duty of care and I must report. So I report. And then here's this person saying, what do you think? And I'm saying, based on the information, I've been working with the family for a long period of time. It's very complex. There is contact. Okay, I understand a bit about UTLA. I've worked in that space. But if you didn't, then they're going to explain that to you. They're very good, these social workers, as well, by the way. So they know what they're doing. They will bring it back on track. They're just trying to get a picture to make an assessment themselves. So we give them what would be of value. If you truly are a third party for that young person and you know that it would be unreasonable to live at home, then you must do that as well. Even if you really like the parent and all of that, if you think for the moment, I think it is, but where they're staying, you have that knowledge and you know it's not safe. That's your primary concern. It's always safety. So given extra money, where is that money going to go? Is it going to continue to finance this family who are breaking a domestic family violence order? Are they going to pay board? Are they getting funded to break the law? You know, there's all that legal, ethical stuff in there, isn't there? You know, am I enabling that family? am I supporting what's going on there? You know, so there's a whole lot of other things, even placing with other family members at the moment. The issue for us as a youth worker is that the young person is unsafe where they are, and that giving the full amount of money will keep them there. Being able to get them to return back. At the moment, it's too soon to say if it is unreasonable to live at home. It definitely is not, in your opinion. But they've asked for your opinion, but it has to be a professional one. Based on all of that, and the contact the mother's having, what we know about the family, no, it doesn't meet the threshold of unreasonable to live at home at this stage. We'd definitely like to see some of the supports put back in there, and all of the other service providers like GP, the child psychiatrists have all been informed to make sure that they can reach out. They can reach out to that young person independently. Because they're still attending school. They can do that, have the mother's permission to do so. They're the legal guardian. The school must say whether he turned up late to school or not. Still getting all of those notices. So it's just looking different to what she'd hoped it would, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's the safety is the primary concern here. So we need to get through all of that, all the story, and get to the facts, and only those facts. So you're advocating for that young person's safety, and you're stepping up and saying, yes, so we have been working with it, because you're working for an organisation. I still have a boss over me, even though I have two bosses. I've got a hater boss and I've got another boss. But in that work, I still answer to somebody. I mean, I've got autonomy, but I've got to check in. I like checking in. I'm the second rung of the ladder. Love it. I always like to be able to say, what do you think about this? And get that perspective from someone. So if you're not sure, then get that from somebody. What do you think? What's your thoughts over that? But the moment you feel yourself going into the story rather than the coexisting needs and the assessment and the facts, then you know you're actually outside your own guidelines that you've set for yourself. You're possibly even outside your position description. So we have, under youth work, we have what's called practice standards, different stories, but this method, this apply each and every single time, and you will be solid. Okay, I'm going to wrap you guys up, and I'm going to do the rest of tonight, and I've pushed you really hard. But questions before we jump out for those who are working. I know that you've got the exact same documents that I would run through, and then we'll unpack a little bit more. This one we go through for 4 weeks. Next week we'll pick some scenarios that are a little softer, but the process is the same. The story is the stuff that rattles us. Okay, so just know that when you're doing the assessment stuff, and every single one of us have, you know, knowledge, or we watch the media, and, you know, we are impacted, whether it's directly or indirectly. You know, this is the work you're doing. Even if you're working in a different sector, you're still working with humans, aren't you?
Mm.
And you need to get them to do a job, but they want to tell you all the other stuff as well. But you need to get them back over here on task and focus. So we've got to do that ourselves when we're in this space. You know, that resilience to hear the story. I know how to care for myself, which is why I unpack that housekeeping before we jump into class. And you go, oh, Vicky could skip this slide. We do this every week. We do it for a reason. Okay. So that is just as much part of your framework that you've got to work with as well. You'll last the distance then. So, all right. So if there's no other questions, please stay if you need to. I'm going to be doing the extra recording, covering some more PowerPoints, but I'll do that without you guys here. I want to thank you, first of all, though. That was a really great work you were doing. You came back with all the specifics, and it was a challenge for you. So that was good. Good work in the breakout rooms, by the way. Well done. And thanks for bringing it back to everybody as well, because there's no right or wrong in that. The only thing is, am I working in my professional boundaries? And that's the line. But your conversations were rich and amazing. But you can see how hard it is, can't you?
Very hard.
Definitely.
But you did great. Really good.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Joe. Have a great week. See you next Monday.
Bye.
Thanks, Vicky. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Amanda, thank you so much. Michelle, how are you going?
I was just going to ask something totally off topic. When we were doing, when we facilitated that meeting and you do minutes, when I used to do HSR, like, it's real funny. One part of me is like, I should have known how to do that. This is the self-reflection later. And then the other half of me, when I was sitting down, I've nearly finished it, like, because I had to listen to the video, obviously. I was reading it back going, well, hang on a minute. I can't actually follow this template exactly right because I didn't do my minutes the same way. I didn't say certain things and I didn't delegate and I didn't give time. So that was going to be my question. So I've got to actually do the minutes as per how I actually did it.
Okay.
And then reflect back on what.
That's great. So in wrapping up, let me just, I'll drop that in there. It is, what you're saying is amazing, by the way. So let me just finish recording for the group, and then you and I will jump in. So that's the same for anyone who's watching. If there's another assessment, you're not quite sure, Michelle's going to raise it, which is terrific, which we do at the end of our classes, of course. And I will come back and summarise where we were tonight. But for this particular unit, if you've got a question, then please make sure you come in with like what it is, CHCCCS004. And Michelle's giving that self-reflection and how powerful it is. So I'll pause and I'll come back in. And I will wrap up a summary around PowerPoint notes, and we'll be right back. So welcome back, everybody. What I wanted to do in wrapping up, just making sure that we're covering a little bit more of our PowerPoint slides. We went through a lot of the body of work and the discussion. And what we're looking for here with this particular unit, which is about assessing coexisting needs, is to have a look deep down into what is it that we're really there to do. And our body of work, which we went through tonight with the class, a couple of scenarios was, what is it exactly what's being asked of us, and what, rather than just the story. So we did our brainstorming activity. Everybody jumped into the breakout room, and then we brought that back, and you can understand how complex it can get. So the things that are solid is our processes and our protocols and working inside our boundaries. The stories is where it becomes difficult. So when we talk about it's complex, we do have to listen to our clients. Of course we do. But inside what they're saying, we're there to capture that information and try and bring out those key points to decide what is it that's the priority of needs. And then if we've got other actions we've got to take. So let's just have a look a little bit further around this. So we do this for the physical, social, economic, and personal. Now, we used a scenario in this one. With this one for the young person that we had was the physical needs. Well, that sits in our Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the shelter, like clothing, shelter, food, that kind of thing. This social, that's around that social, still connected to their school community, their peers and things like that. Economic, that was the purpose that we were looking at tonight for the assessment. We discussed that around unreasonable to live at home, which sat around a financial. So that's the economic. And then the personal. The personal is usually the story, but it's the client's story, not our story. And they're not asking for our opinion about that story. They're asking for our professional summary and our professional assessment based on facts. So what are some of the assessment tools? Well, we work a lot in acronyms, okay? So it could be, we'll come in here. this relates mostly to NDIS space, so a lot of disability, but the sector that you work in will have their own. Okay, so I just want to unpack some of that. So the process is it must be reliable, meaning you can speak to that only that you know to be true, that it's valid. Okay, so it's been supported, you know it's valid, not opinion based. Collecting information, listening to what's being said, reporting that information as you say that without the narrative, the roles and the responsibilities that we have and our client have, or maybe that person that's giving us a call that's another third party, and then where and when that information. So where in this case might be, yep, in the same location, postcode, whatever, same school community, accessing the centre where you're working, and then when, over a long period of time. And that's where you have formed that opinion around the assessment. It might be the first time that you meet a client, and so it'll be met in our office on such and such a date and the time for a 1 hour appointment. Or if they were scheduled, did not attend, and then you did a follow-up call to make sure they were okay. The assessment process, the social needs, is there substance abuse? That could be one of the presenting issues, so the coexisting. So I'm isolated, I have no friends, and the only people I'm hanging around with are the ones that you know, I'm drinking with all the time. They're not really my friends, but I do that so I'm not isolated. Physical abilities, my capacity to be able to do things, my mental health, or their mental health, of course. And this is what we call wraparound supports. So we can't just see only, okay, so you're an alcoholic. We can't see that in isolation. We also need to have a look at what are the other things that are impacting. Gosh, they've got a wound on their leg and it's just not healing. That seems to be something that might need clinical, and like you're feeling really flattened down. So we're looking at all of that. That's the assessment process. And in the middle of that is the person, and our approach is holistic rather than in isolation. They've come in and said, oh, I need a food hamper. That's it. See you later. Okay. What else? Okay. And what else? And that is us hearing the story. It's not that we don't want to hear the story, but we're trying to get enough information to determine, is this work that we do? But if it isn't, you may be able to refer them to an agency that does. But rather than like, oh, that's not what we do, shut that down. We can do this quite quickly, but we slow down our energy in that space and get the facts. That's great. Okay. And some of that we do, but there's also a really great service. Would you like me to find out if they've got any availability for you? And is today we're asking intentional interviewing questions, or I've got their brochure. Is that something that perhaps you'd like to do? Or next time you come back, we could do that together. Okay, depends on your position, if it lets you do that. So when we prepare for an assessment, we need to make sure that we're working inside our organisation's policies and procedures. We need to gather information about that person. Have they been here before? And do I have the client's file notes? What are the practical aspects? Like, can I actually do that for them? Yes, I can make a couple of phone calls, or yes, we can give them a taxi voucher to go there, or yes, we actually do have a worker that transports people. Like there's, you know, what's the practical side of it? How are we going to make that work for them? And then provide them with information that they can follow up. They can think about it a little bit more. It's informed decision making. So that's our role, preparing for an assessment. So getting information that we can give them when they come and speak to us. What is conducting an assessment activity? Well, we did that in our breakout room. We had a look at a current situation, the resources available, empowerment in that space, and having empathy for that. That is how we conduct ourselves in that space. And in wrapping up, so the need for the assessment, the scenario that we applied was about the social worker had a need, they had a job, They were contacting us because that's our job. What tools did we use? We're referred to as our notes, the facts. And then the assessment process, how we break that down and summarize it, the language that we use around that, and then how do we prepare for an assessment? So when you get an unexpected phone call, there's not a lot of preparation other than know your work, know the language, know what you cannot say, know what it is that they're asking, and only answer those questions. Don't give too much information. Be mindful that if you're speaking about somebody and they're not there, do you have consent to say everything there, but what is most useful? I don't know the outcome of the scenario that I gave you. That's actually not important to us as workers. Often we never get to hear how something works out in the long run. The only thing we've got is that moment in time and us doing our body of work in a way that's compassionate, unconditional regard, empathy, non-judgmental, and only doing what we are there to do inside those professional guidelines that we work to. We are representing the organisation. So they've come in to see, in our scenarios, like First Access, you're a worker, they're coming in to see First Access. They're not coming in to see Vicky. So when you as a learner enroll, you're coming into Hader space. I work for Hader. So this is about us representing our organisation when we're there. You add that layer of who you are as a person, but we always have that boundary and we need that. That's what keeps us safe in the workspace as well. And some of those practices that we have, and we repeat them. So in reflection and in our session summary, the assessment is so important because it'll get reviewed. We'll keep adding information, but we really do need to be able to, first of all, work out how can I best help this person and are we the right service? And then if it's complex and there's more than one thing, how do we make sure that we don't just let them go out the door and the only one thing, just dig a little deeper, even if they don't share it. But if there's two things, and there could be more, just making sure that we are mindful that there's more to this and there may be more work for us to do. That's what separates us between, say, retail, come in, make a purchase, to us working in the community service sector, because we're working in the human service sector. And the clients that we have stories, and this is their journey, and we walk beside them at the pace that they're happy to move. Okay, so I will wrap that up for us tonight. And this recording will come out to you within the next day or two. 48 hours is what we like to do. I'll stop sharing. And we are still recording. We had a couple of questions just at the end about another unit that we're working on. However, if you've got any questions, please come back to me. Send it to me in an email at Vicky, VIKI, at haderinstitute.edu.au. And we're trying to just get those bookings as well open up for you. So please reach out to us as well. If you've got role plays and you're not quite sure, by all means, please ask a question. Try and attempt some of those role plays on your own if you can, but if not, know that you can reach out. The availability will be whatever we can fit in for you and what you can fit in for us as well. And we'll give you some support to make that happen. So have a great week and we'll see you next Monday for session 2 of the coexisting needs.